Welcome to Duke Chapel, those of you in this building, and also those of you tuning in with us through the chapel's media ministry online. I'm the chapel dean, Luke Powry, and I will be moderating tonight's conversation on responding to violence with justice and mercy. And this conversation tonight is in partnership with the Religious Coalition for a Nonviolent Durham, and so we're grateful to them for that partnership tonight. This conversation is a part of the chapel's Bridge Panels series that seeks to bridge people from various walks of life to discuss issues of shared concern. And violence, in all of its varied forms, is a shared concern. And so we bring this concern into the intellectual and spiritual heart of Duke's campus, into the center of campus in Duke Chapel. As one Duke student recently noted, the chapel is not only a religious site, but also both the geographic and symbolic heart of our campus. So tonight, we place violence and responses to it at the center of the university, and we listen to the heartbeat of humanity. And this panel and our panelists are here to discuss not only violence, but how to respond to violence with justice and mercy. To be reminded, as the closing hymn from yesterday morning in this space declared, what does the Lord require? Do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. Our panelists will help us to think deeply about responses to violence as we hear their stories, experiences, insights, and suggestions. All of us here are sitting in their classroom. And we are here waiting to learn as we listen to your voices. Our panelists tonight, beginning all the way to at the end to my right, we have Ms. Jocelyn Sims, who's here speaking in honor of her son, Ray Sims. Ray was 30 years old when he was fatally shot on May 21st, 2005. Since Ray's murder, Jocelyn has spoken on behalf of the Religious Coalition for a Nonviolent Durham and others for common sense gun laws, repeal of the death penalty, and victim compensation. She's a member of the Durham chapter of Parents of Murdered Children. Next to her, we have the Honorable Marcia Moray, who is the Chief District Court Judge of the 14th Judicial District. Judge Moray has served the district court bench from 1999. She's an advocate for juveniles and presides over delinquency court. As an assistant district attorney in Durham, she helped create the Teen Court and Restitution Program, in which young first-time offenders are tried by their peers for misdemeanor offenses. Further, coming closer in to me, we have the Reverend Dr. Bullock, Melvin Bullock, who recently retired as chaplain of the Polk Correctional Center, a juvenile prison in Butner, North Carolina. He brings a passion for youth and prison ministry, and he has 30-plus years of pastoral experience and is currently the founder and pastor of the Fisher of Men Church in Henderson, North Carolina, and Azusa Church in Roxborough, North Carolina. Our final panelist, last but not least, is my Duke colleague, Dr. Simon Partner, who is a professor of the late 19th and 20th century Japanese history at Duke. So you might wonder, what is he doing here? Well, he is the co-author of the book entitled Bull City Survivor, Standing Up to a Hard Life in a Southern City. This book recounts the post-war history of one of the South's fastest growing communities through the eyes of one of its most disadvantaged residents. In the process, the book attempts to shed light on the social and economic conditions that led to the murder of Emma's son, one of 25 to 30 people, many of them African-American young men, who fall victim to gun violence each year in Durham. Can we welcome our panelists? To begin things tonight, to begin to hear their stories, I want to begin with a question and ask all of them to share an answer to this question. And the question is, how has your life and work intersected with violence?
Okay. Excuse me. Well, with me, after my son got killed and I went back to work, I was snappy with customers. I had so much anger and hatred in my heart. I didn't want to, care what anybody had to say. I just didn't care anymore about anything, and it caused me to stop going to see my friends. If it wasn't my kids or somebody close related to me, I didn't go anywhere. And when I'm at work, when I was working, people would come up to me and they would say, "I'm sorry about your loss." And I know they meant well. I had so much anger in me, I wanted to yell, "My son is not lost. He's at Beechwood Cemetery 6 feet down," and stuff. And I'm still going through that anger and that pain right now. I've learned how to better control it maybe, but that pain is still here. So it doesn't matter whether you're working and you go on with your life, but when something like this happens, you do a whole U-turn. Your whole life is like you born again as somebody else. You're not who you used to be. Your thoughts have changed. Your emotions have changed. Your feelings towards strangers have changed. I can look at somebody and first thing I'm thinking, he looking at me. Did he kill my child? Did he know who killed my child? Why does he keep looking at me? And I was getting suspicious of everybody, young and old. It didn't matter. If they even looked at me, I thought they knew something about my son's murder case. And I wanted to go and grab them and say, "Tell me what you know." Okay. And, but like I said, when my son died, it took a part of me that's never going to heal. But because of the religion collision with Marshall, I found out I knew there was others, but I met these people and saw they was going through the same pain I was going through. And because of Justin Cook, the young man right here, he did a story on Ray, and between the two of them, they got me to talking about my child, expressing how I feel about nobody getting mad or angry or whatever. And because of Marsha also, I was going through so much. I wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating, wasn't doing anything. But her organization helped me see a psychiatrist where I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. And I still have problems sleeping. And a lot of people don't realize that when we have someone murdered in our family, the pain is so deep, we may not even know we have that problem. We go on with our lives, and people say, "Well, look, she's laughing, so she's fine." Just because we laugh don't mean we're fine. A lot of time I laugh because if I don't laugh, I'm going to cry. And if I cry, I'm bringing my kids down. My son's first grandchild was born this year. He didn't live to see that child. His youngest child was a month old the day he was murdered. She don't remember him. She got no memories of him at all, only what we tell her. His son, thank God, he always wanted them to be smart in school, do good in school. So the two oldest girls graduated, and they're getting ready to go back to college. His son is taking early college at Central, and his 9-year-old daughter, they're talking about putting her up a grade or two. So I know he will be proud of them. But it still hurts so much, and we got to realize it's not just a black crime, it's not a white crime, it's crime, period. It's a community crime, and we got to do something about it. Like this meeting here tonight, look how many people here. More people should be here for this, because it's not happening right like in North Durham or just East Durham. It's happening all over Durham. It's happening down the street from Duke. It's happening on the campuses. We, as a community, got to stand up. We got to get the churches involved. We got to do something. We might not be able to stop it completely, but at least put a big dent in it. Every time I hear of a murder, it brings my son's murder back, and like it happened all over again. Every time I hear a siren, I got to call and make sure my son's all right. Even if they're at work, I call on his job and make sure he's all right. Nobody should have to live like that, but that's how I live day to day, even now. And I had 2 cousins murdered in the past couple of years, too. It's just too many murders happening in town. Too many children are growing up without their parents. And some of these kids, when they have their parents murdered, they have so much anger, they join gangs, they turn to drugs, and they end up being killed themselves or in prison. So we got to do something to stop this circle. We got to stand up, not as a black race or a white race, but as a community, because we are all God's children. We all got to stand up for this and say enough is enough. I'm tired of crying in the middle of the night when my children are asleep or not around so they won't see me cry. I'm tired of wishing I can go dig my baby up and bring him back to life. I'm tired of asking God to go back to that day, do a miracle, to go back to that day and take me and bring my baby back. I'm tired of going to the grave and looking at his face on that stone knowing he's in that ground. No mother, no child should see their loved ones like that. The last time I kissed my child, he was in a casket. And I have not been able to hear his voice since or touch him since. And it is not right for anyone, no matter how old they are or how young they are, to die that way. No one has the right to take a life. And we as a community, if we don't try to do something now, it's just going to get worse. The year my son got killed, I think there was like 35 murders that year. And a lot of them still are not solved. I got a deck of playing cards on me right now with 52 faces of murder victims whose cases was not solved. That's not even a scratch. It's a little bit of how many cold cases of murders there are in Durham alone. We need to do something about this. We need to stand up and say enough is enough. Forget the color. Just look at the person. That's a human being. Our loved one was a human being. We got to have jobs for these people. We got to let everybody know, hey, you just as important as the next person. You can't turn around and say, oh, he been in jail, he ain't no good. Everybody makes mistakes, whether they go to jail or not. Everybody have made some kind of mistake. We got to start with these kids now to get these guns out of their hands. We got to punish the ones who putting the guns in their hands also. If you give a child a gun and he kills somebody, charge him with it too. Because these kids are 13 and 14 years old now with these pistols. And they go to court and they're crying because they're sorry. If they were sorry, they would have cried when it happened and told what happened. It makes them look tough and make them look bad. They're grown then. They're trying to prove something to somebody. They're trying to get out of the hole that they had dug or somebody had dug for them and put them in that hole. Get these kids out of that hole and let them know they are important to us. No matter what kind of record they have, no matter where they was raised at, no matter who their parents are, let them know they are loved and can come and talk to somebody. If you can't talk to their parents, let them know they got somebody they can come and talk to. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. And following up, Ms. Sims, thank you for what you said. And I'm coming from this from how has my work intersected with violence. I've been lucky. I haven't had violence in my family. So I entered into the court system and became an assistant DA because it was a job. And they put me down in a juvenile courtroom because that's where the new DAs went. Nobody watched, and you kind of learn how to do the law and present your cases. And about 2 years after I started, a very new prosecutor, in 1992, there was a case in Durham about 2 miles from here. And it was a young 13-year-old who had raked leaves for a 90-year-old. And he noticed that the 90-year-old Mary Haddon had a car in her garage. He wanted that car. So one night after dark, he went and looked in the front door, banged on the glass, broke the glass, opened the door, went up the stairs. Mrs. Haddon was at the top of the stairs and said, "Get out of here." He said, "No, I want your car keys." She wouldn't give him the car keys. He went out and got a garden mattock, which is like an axe, and came in and brutally killed her. He didn't intend to kill her. What he wanted was a car. And for 2 days, he drove her car around the streets of Durham, and he picked up some friends. And finally, one of the friends' mother noticed the car outside their house and called the police. And they traced it back to Mary Haddon and found her body that had been lying at the top of the stairs for 3 days. And so I had that case, and it was the first time they showed me pictures of an autopsy. And I can remember to this day looking at those pictures. They haunted me for years. And at that time, a 13-year-old, the laws in North Carolina, juveniles had to be tried in juvenile court. It was only 14 that if it was a serious crime, a juvenile could be transferred to the adult system. Well, Greg was 13, and so by law, in the juvenile court system, he had a hearing. It went on for a week or so. He was found delinquent of murder, and he was sent to a training school until his 18th birthday. So for 5 years, he spent time in a training school, C.A. Dillon, just north of Durham. And at that time, the rehabilitation, there was no restorative justice. It was pretty much house them. Give them the education, house them, but don't treat them. He got out on his 18th birthday. There was no wraparound. There was no follow-through. Simply the door opened to C.A. Dillon, and he was released. People warned him, "Don't go back to Durham." He came back to Durham. The sad thing is, he never stopped wanting what wasn't his. He immediately started stealing again. And within a year, Greg went to a gas station about a half mile from where Mrs. Haddon was killed. And it was on videotape. And he picked up some things, took them to the cash register, pulled out his gun. The cash register attendant gave him all the cash. And I watched the videotape. And he picked up a pack of gun, and he was about to put the gun back in his pocket, and he shot the attendant right through the head. He was 19. He was put in jail, and 2 weeks later, he hung himself. So that was my experience of violence that you couldn't shake, and a tragedy on so many levels, of the victim's family, of the other victim's family, but most of all, our society that didn't help this young man, and what caused him to take the turn he did. Part of the evidence that was presented at the juvenile hearing was some of the videos that were found in his room, or I think they were they weren't DVDs, they were Super 8s at the time. Die Hard 2, Terminator 2, Silence of the Lambs, Lethal Weapons. That's what our 13-year-olds were watching then, back in 1992. So I'm not going to leave this story as a horrible story of two tragedies, but I'm going to tell you what happened as a result of that. And I think it's important to understand when something like that happened, the media at the time, it was a frenzy. I mean, it was not only North Carolina, it was pretty nationwide. A 13-year-old committed this brutal murder. And when it becomes a media frenzy, it gets to the politicians to talk about it. And it gets, what can we do about this? And so the General Assembly, right after this happened, they said, we're going to do something. We're going to lower the age in which we can try juveniles in our adult courtrooms. Sure enough, General Assembly said, yes, 13-year-olds, if they are charged with murder or a serious violent felony, we can ask our courts, transfer them to the adult system, lock them away. That was the first response. The second response was our governor at the time, who was ready to run for his fourth term, Governor Hunt. Governor Hunt, in his campaign, said, "We must crack down on these punks and thugs. We are going to reform our juvenile laws. We are going to get tough and keep our communities safe from these predators." So he set up a commission of legislators, community people, and he hired me to be the executive director of this commission on the reform of juvenile justice in North Carolina. And when I heard his campaign theme, I thought, no way. But I took it on. And I took it on with the understanding I would be the executive director of this commission on one condition: for them to understand what they're talking about. Do not respond to crime because you see a picture of a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old or 16-year-old in a newspaper. You have to understand the root cause. So this commission and Governor Hunt, the first thing I said, you're going into a courtroom. You're going to sit and watch what happens in juvenile court. They are not anywhere representative of the 13-year-old Greg. And so the governor, for the first time, and the 16 members of the commission went to Charlotte, and we sat in a juvenile courtroom. And we watched a 13-year-old girl in there without any family, standing by her lawyer. Her worst charge was stealing blue jeans, but she was run away from her home. She was truant from school. The judge had had it with her, and he put her in training school too. The same type of a training school that admitted kids with murder. And back then, you could do that by the law. And Governor Hunt looked at me and he said, "Where's that child's mama?" I said, "Governor, the law doesn't require a parent to be here when their child's being adjudicated." "Well, she was just sent away indefinitely until she was 18. "Yes, sir, that's what our laws allow." "Well, that's not right. Who's helping that child?" He watched another one being sent to training school for a misdemeanor. And back in 1998, when we started this commission, we had over 1,300 children who committed an offense before their 16th birthday in our training schools. That commission and the governor went out to detention centers. They went to programs. They started seeing this is not an image of a young black teenager with automatic weapons. We're dealing with kids that have been abused, they've been neglected, they're behind in their education, the parents have not known how to parent them. We are going to reform our laws, and we did, and North Carolina did it right. It was a very balanced approach. It was, do not put nonviolent kids away in a training school. Get them resources and help them. Make sure those parents are in a courtroom, so it is a family approach to trying to help juveniles. It worked. And how many times this year have you heard one politician talk about crime or violence in this election? Have you heard it? And we need to be talking about it, Ms. Sims, because it hasn't gone away. We've done well. My passion is juvenile justice. My passion is how do you help these kids when they weren't given an equal chance in life? How do we help restore it? How do we help teach them? How do we help them know they're not alone more than anything? And that's the intersection of my life, my passion now. It's no longer a job. But how do we help the families that are the victims? And how do we avoid our youth from going back down a path of no return? Thank you.
Well, I see the crimes from a different perspective. My perspective, I grew up in a very small community called Nutbush, which is now overrun by Carl Lake. And I was born in 1939, and I lived in that community till I got ready to go to college. we had 4 murderers in our community. 4 murders from the time I was born until I was 18 years old. Now we have escalated. They have them nightly, and they probably have them right now where I speak. So I am very concerned that these crimes have taken place, and I'm left to minister. I find myself left to minister to these people who have committed these offenses against society, and that's where the pain come in at. And so I have ministered to people from sex offender, murder, life sentence, and these are young people. I'm not talking about 50-year-old people. These are people that's 18, 19 to 25 years of age. And that's what I'm wondering what society going to do with that type, that group of people, because they most certainly going to impact our entire society. Been working at Polk Correction. As of this morning, we had 900 inmates in one prison at Polk. In the state of North Carolina, we have 42,000 state inmates as of today. That's a big block, isn't it? And out of that group of people, it strikes me, and it running something like about 63% of these people are African American. At Polk Correctional, as of today, 900 inmates, 633 African Americans. We have 198 natives. That group is growing. The native groups, which is a small group of people, but they are escalating. And then we have 98 Caucasian, 4 other groups they are diverse, and we have 46 Hispanics. That's a large group of people that are incarcerated today, and to minister to these people, that's where the pain come in. When you try to minister to these people. Now, some when an inmate does very well, we consider inmate does very well when they conform to the internal structure, because they come in at all ages, all level of education. And this where the tough part come in. Some of them is so low that they doesn't even fit in the education cycle. They are reading below 6th grade. And so they just can't fit in the GED program, which the state does a pretty good job with the GED program. But what happened there, there's a system that stops them in their education. Okay, it stops them in their education. They get a GED program. They get in a GED program. And most of the time, they can't get into a college program because of the site they're in. They got the various sites. Some sites that just don't have the educational facilities and the capacity to further educate these people. And they get out. And so some of them get out, and the recidivism rate is astronomical. They come right back because sex offending just hate it. There's no outlet for a sex offender. They have met a dead-end road. And the tough part about it, we have inmates that call us, they have gotten out, and guess what? They can't go to church. Church have children. They had a dead-end road. And so that's my weeping point. I believe that something ought to be done in that area, even if it required building special schools for inmates. Because if you cut a person's life off, and I'm not an advocate of shooting people, but I'm saying raping people. I'm not there, but my thing is, what are we going to do with these people? And so they are expensive. It costs roughly $32,000 a year for the keeper inmate, and they are very expensive. And so we have that front. That's just one level in the sex offender. And my other thing is employment in other areas also is very difficult for inmates to find when they are discharged. And I noticed in my doing, once an inmate makes several trips to the prison, they develop what we call a prison family affinity. They want to be there. They enjoy being there. And so that makes longevity in the prison a very long journey. I could go on and on now with this, and I'm going to give you one illustration that was very, very striking. An inmate became intoxicated with drugs. This is the story. We counseled with them, and this was this inmate's story. And he was walking, and some kind person decided to pick him up. And he said he don't know why he did it. The person carried him where he wanted to go. He ended up killing him. He ended up murdering that person. And then when he get back to his regular self, he regretted, but he had committed the crime. And one other thing that I think need to be corrected in the prison system, that need to be addressed, maybe I should say corrected, maybe it need to be addressed. Medication. Correcting behavior with medication. What a failure. A person that cannot function except he on medication. And that person build up an addiction and an affinity to drugs, to that type of drugs, and they are terrible trying to manage that person. So that's just some of my views, and something I like to see change, because that is open up avenues so these people can go to church because they can get some help from that level. And I don't know how they're going to be done, but that's the area. And also employment. Thank you.
Good evening. Okay. So actually my answer to Dean Powery's question is a very short one, because I've been very fortunate, and my life has been a remarkably peaceful one, and I'm extremely grateful for that. And I know how lucky I am. Why am I sitting here is a very good question you asked, and I'm not sure I know the answer, actually. I think in some ways I'm here under false pretenses, because although I am an academic, I have not studied in a scholarly way problems of violence in America, and I don't have good answers to give from an academic point of view. My own road to connecting with violence in Durham has been much more of a personal one. I guess I would say this is a second career for me. I didn't start off as a scholar. I had another career before that. And one of the really wonderful things about the path my life has taken is that I feel like I'm a lot more idealistic now than I was when I was a teenager. The normal path is the opposite, I gather. You become more cynical. But I feel that I was not an activist and not a very involved individual as a teenager or a young adult. And I've been very fortunate, I think, to be in an environment where I can actually develop ideals here. And so in some ways, the path I have taken has had that background. I also have become, in the last 10 years, affiliated with the Quaker community. And I guess that's been a part of my road towards greater idealism. You know, the Quakers have a huge emphasis on peacemaking and nonviolence, and it really struck me as, from the beginning of my association with them, as something, you know, really worth devoting a lot of my attention and time to. And that was how I became involved with the project to end violence here in Durham, primarily through the Religious Coalition for a Nonviolent Durham. So, as I said, I don't really think that I'm able to talk as a scholar about the problem of violence. I'm really talking much more as just an ordinary citizen of Durham. A few years ago, I found myself in the position of wanting to do something to engage with the issue of violence in Durham. But as a middle-aged white man, doesn't come from here, with no history of violence in my own family, what can somebody like me do? I struggled with this for a long time, and I guess if there's one thing I would like to share with you, it would just be to think a little bit about, I'm kind of anticipating Dean Powery's second question here, but if you'll forgive me, to just think about some of the things that I think ordinary citizens can do here in Durham. So, you know, I feel this is, I guess, more from the Quaker point of view, but I think the first thing we can do is go inside ourselves. I mean, all of us have violence in us, and I think we need to recognize that. And we need to understand what is in ourselves and in our own family members, and you know, think hard about how to control that and how to live with that and how to be at peace with that in a peaceful way within our own lives. And I think in that way we need to commit ourselves to peace. So that's one thing we can do, is go inside ourselves. But I think the other thing that we can do that to me has been incredibly important and really has changed my life in all sorts of ways that I think are very much, you know, I feel very grateful for, is to reach out to people who have been affected by violence. So one of the things, as Dean Powery mentioned, I co-authored a book which tells the life story of somebody who has been very affected by violence. And I'll tell you about that in just a second, but one of the things that really struck me as I researched and wrote that book is how divided this community is. You know, you see a young, very lively, vibrant community, growing community, affluent, well-educated. That's the people that we see around the campus of Duke University. But there's also a very marginalized and deprived community of people that are honestly very invisible to the majority of the community here. It's difficult for somebody who comes from the privileged middle class to go out and actually even connect and meet with people who have been victims of violence and many of the other problems that affect parts of the community here. You know, there are plenty of avenues to do this. In my case, it was through the Religious Coalition. But, you know, to me, I feel like the first thing was to recognize my own privilege and to also to recognize the existence of and the marginalization of this other community here in Durham. And to some extent, to try and study and understand what's going on here, because it's not something you read about in the newspapers very much, and it's not something that you necessarily are exposed to. In fact, I feel like our city, to some extent, tries to hide it from us, actually, because it's not good for public relations. And so I think that's something we can also do. And then the other thing we can do, I think, is that, you know, each of us has a skill, and I think we can apply it to the problem. So this was something that I had very little confidence in myself. So as Luke said, I'm a historian of Japan. What can anybody really do with that background that would make any difference at all? But one thing in my background was that I have the habit of, had the practice of writing people's stories down. That's what a historian does. So that's how this book project came about. It wasn't actually a very difficult transition to make. I don't know that writing a book about somebody's life makes a big difference, but it's something. And so I think that all of us have a skill that we can bring, whether it's storytelling, whether it's mentoring, whether it's mediation perhaps, or some other form of peace building. There's something that all of us can do. Then another thing I think we can do is show solidarity with people who are victims. Actually, since I know a few of the people in the audience, I feel like I'm really preaching to the converted here, because these are the people that taught me what to do. But still, go to a vigil. If there's a march to protest against the violence, and there should be marches, we should be out in the streets. We shouldn't be thinking that it's acceptable to have the level of suffering and violence that we have here in Durham. We should be participating. We should be protesting. The vigils, I hope that that Jocelyn will talk about her own experience at some point. But my sense is that these are the most loving events that I attend here in Durham. I see the love in the families that have lost a member. They're incredibly moving. And there's something I think that all of us, all the citizens of Durham, should be participating in. And I'll finally just mention a couple of other things that I think that, this is a path that we have to walk down that is an incredibly difficult one as a community to address. And we've heard a lot of different perspectives, all of them relating to very difficult and intractable problems. Like I said, I think we can start with ourselves and we can go on to reach out and make connections. But beyond that, there's a bigger battle to fight. The battle for effective gun control laws in America, and the battle to reduce the level of violence in our government. This is a country that has become a maker of war in the last few decades. And it is not surprising that our people have become violent, have become attached to weapons. These are the currency of our nation. So these are huge and impossible fights, probably, but we should be fighting them. Thank you.
Let me pose a question before we get to the question Simon anticipated. He just answered. Because there's something that, as you all were telling your stories about the different episodes of violence or people that you have encountered that were perpetrators of violence or victims. And I wonder what you might say. Feel free not to answer as well, but to jump in as you will. To say, what do you think are the roots of violence? The root causes of violence. Where does that come from in your perspective?
I would think of a family. I think it began at the family structure. Because we have a lot of cohabitation, and while you may have a family grow up that they have several fathers, mother with, you grew up and got 4 children, 4 daddies. That's a problem within the ranks of the children. In my pastoring, I run into that quite frequent. Sometimes one of the fathers might be a little bit more generous and supportive of his child, and so he expressed his support where the other children might not be getting support. And I will say that there's a group called the Angel Tree have helped that quite frequent during Christmas time. They just take a list of the children, they give them all gifts. And so that's somewhat, bring a little stability among the children. So the children can grow up rebellious in an environment like that.
I feel
Miss
like,
Sims?
yes, it might have to be a family structure too, but you have to look at it this too. A lot of these people are low income. They barely making ends meet, and the children go out and see these kids, these brand new sneakers, these clothes, certain stuff, and they want to dress like that. They want to look like that. And a lot of these people who are on food stamps barely have enough food to last a month. So you have an older child, maybe 13 or 14, tired of seeing his mother struggle. So what he's going to do, he's going to go out there and say, okay, I'm going to get some money. I'm going to make some money to help my mama out, to help take care of my brother or my sister and stuff. So they can go out, what they going to do? Start selling the drugs or robbing somebody. Then you also got to look at it this. They feel like they can be in their home where their family grew up in and they was raised. And all of a sudden they're told they have to find them somewhere to live because somebody done bought those houses and they turned down these houses, put up condos and everything, and they basically putting them, say, wherever you got can find it, you got a certain time to find your house. And when they leave that spot, they got to go somewhere they really don't either know anybody or they moving to where they might be, say, a blood, and they might have to move to where there's a crib, and there goes violence right there. A lot of people are losing their homes, and they are being forced to move way out. Like when they tore down Few Gardens, they promised the majority of everybody in Few Gardens, y'all would have first chance to move in there, but most of them could not afford it. So now just about everybody that was in Few Gardens out there on Martin Luther King, they're basically out in the county. And now they're calling that area the new Few Gardens. It's structure at home, but it's also what you do to the ones who live in these houses, what these kids are growing up seeing. These kids are saying, well, hey, they don't give a, I'm not going to say it, I'm in church. They don't give a about us, so I'm not going to give a about them. I'm going to go out there and make my money. They can go put an application here, don't have a job. Put an application, don't get a job. And unfortunately, they don't see, hey, you need to go to more than 1, 2, or 3 places to apply for a job. After a while, they say, forget it. Nobody's going to hire me. I got to make money. And that's what they're going to do. They can go out there and make quick money. The quickest way they think is going to either be to rob somebody or to sell drugs. And that's the only way, because a lot of them, like, they get out of jail, they try to find a job because, first of all, when they get out of jail, 9 out of 10 times, they got to pay probation. They got no money. If they don't pay it, they go back to jail. They got back child support. If they don't pay it, they go back to jail. So what they're going to do, go back to jail, they're going to say, no, I'm going to sell drugs and get some money to pay my probation off, to pay my child support. And then when they get caught, they're right back in jail. Then their records get longer and longer and longer. But I have personally seen where some of them had actually tried to look for a job and look and look and look until they got to the point where they said they don't care anymore. So they're better off in jail because they get a free meal, they got a place to sleep. They don't have to worry about this and that. But a lot of these kids are doing that because they want their mama to live a better life. And a lot of them don't have a mother and father thing, and some of the fathers not staying with the mother because in order for that woman to get help, to get food stamps and Medicaid, that man cannot live in that house. So that man eventually going to end up this place with this woman or whatever, and then you got a bunch of kids growing up around each other telling, that's my brother, that's my sister. And I mean, you get all of this in one pot and stir it up, somebody's going to explode, and that's what they're doing, they're exploding now. And that's what we got to do. We got to start with the homes, but we also got to start with the jobs, got to start with the pay. And like I said, I know somebody who went to jail, was a felon. I'm not sure what case of felon, but he got hurt. He went to apply for food stamps. Because he was a certain felon, denied. He needs to go to the doctor. He can't get Medicaid, denied because of his record. So he walk around there sick, can't do nothing. He can't get a job. He can't get medical care. He can't get food. So what he's going to do? He's going to sell drugs so he can eat. He's going to sell drugs so he can have a place to sleep. And, I mean, all of this is basically the same thing. It starts with the home and with the government and everything else. You got to treat these people like they are human beings. These kids got to grow up feeling like that somebody care. They're not, they got a right to live like everybody else. But when you start treating one at the bottom of the ladder and you got everybody else at the top of the ladder, that's just going to cause more problems than originally, because they're going to get tired of being treated like that, tired of feeling like they're being stepped on all the time. They're going to say, hey, I'm tired of people stepping on me, so I'm going to start stepping on other people, and that's what they're doing.
Thank you. Is anybody else on that? Well, go ahead.
I agree, and I think there's also emotional violence. We see a lot of emotional violence, especially in our family courts. And we have a specific domestic violence court. And so often, and even with the kids, it's people not feeling that they're heard, not feeling that they're understood, not feeling they have control. And a lot of kids ask, do you know what anger is? And they look at me like, no. I said, what is anger? Anger is not getting what you want. What is it you want? And so often those kids look absolutely, I have no idea what I want, because no one's asked them what they wanted. So listening, helping them understand, going back. We see the emotional, physical violence is what courts are about, and the courts are the least equipped to handle and change people that really need understanding. They need people to come in with them. I know Marsha Owens comes into court occasionally if someone's charged or if someone's a victim, and there's a group of support, and suddenly that person is either healed as a victim or felt supported if they've been a defendant. Basic understanding.
If I may, I'm sorry, but I would just like to say again, I think it's, and a lot of this conversation has been about a divided society, I guess, and problems of violence connected to poverty. But it's in all of us. And I just would like to encourage you, before you leave, to take a look around the walls of the chapel. There's a very powerful exhibit right now about sexual violence here on the Duke University campus, and you will be moved by it.
Great. Thank you for that plug, Simon. What he is referring to is what is called the Breaking Out exhibit, which is a photographic tribute to survivors of sexual assault, and it's in honor of Gender Violence Prevention and Awareness Month. So on the way out tonight, please take that in. One last question from me before we open it up for your questions. Violence is present with us. It's a reality that we have to deal with. What would be your suggestions for constructive responses to situations of violence? How can we respond constructively and find a way forward through all of the violence that we see in society or experience ourselves?
Psychiatric help, and for the young men, help with good mentors they can talk to and be with, spend some quality time with, to show what they're capable of. A lot of these young kids don't think they're capable of doing anything, but they need someone to take them out there and show them, hey, you can do this, you can be that. And also in the schools, a lot of these kids, like you said, don't know how to read past like the 6th grade level. That's on the teachers. They are there to teach those kids, but I hear some teachers say, well, they don't want to learn. Maybe they don't want to learn because you don't know how to teach them, how to reach them. But there are kids out there, even grown men, who can hardly read now. And so you got to start, like I said, the schools are so crowded now, and I can understand why the teacher ain't got time to spend one-on-one. But still, you're going to know what child in that class need the help the most because you're looking at the work they're doing. That's going to tell you right then and there, oh, this child definitely needs help. He needs more of my time than this child. So spend time with that child. If you can't do it, then find a tutor or somebody that can help that child. Because if the child's on the low reading level, he's going to feel like people are going to think he's stupid. He's going to feel like he's useless. Like, hey, ain't nothing, I can't get no job with, if I can't read like this, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then he's going to be in the streets. So we got to start in the school, we got to start at home, and that's the court system too. We got to realize if you put a 13-year-old locked up with an 18-year-old, what you think he's going to learn from that 18-year-old who done been in the streets all his life? He's going to learn the same thing plus more. So when he get out, he's going to know more about how to do this stuff than he did before he first went in there. They don't need to be locked up with no 18, 19-year-old. They need a place where they can be structured straightly, the right way. They need somewhere where they can go. And the parents do need, it's not just on everybody, it's the parents too. They need to realize these are your kids. You need to help structure them too. If they get in trouble, you need to be there by their side saying, yes, you did wrong, but I'm still here. I still got your back. And we're going to move forward. We're going to do better. We're going to do this. We got to have a way to reach these young mothers. Because a lot of these young mothers out here now, they more thinking about the boyfriend, the partying and stuff, and the grandma's got the kids and stuff. Because I raised 2 of my grandkids, basically, and stuff. And when you get to a certain age, you're like, I'm tired, I can't do no more. And these kids, by then, they almost grown. So they say, well, hey, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to do this and that. And they don't want to listen. So it's a circle, and you got to find a way to break that circle. And you got to start at home, you got to start at school. It's school, home, church, everything. Everybody got to be involved in it, and not just one person. It's going to take the whole community to build that child so where he can stand up and hold his head up high.
I would say that the courts are doing a lot. Mr. Eccles, our DA, is having to go, I know, and Ms. Battaglia, but our DA is concerned. He's coming to vigils, I know. We try to have therapeutic courts. We have a drug treatment court. We have what we call a people's court, that we're trying to get people to come in and mediate, sit down and talk this out. So it won't be a conviction, it won't be anger, it will talk it out. Restorative justice is out there. How do you get someone who has been a victim to have the forgiveness and talk to the offender and let the offender see the emotions? The courts can learn a whole lot from what we need to do to overcome violence. And especially, I want to work with youth. Right now, I've started a program, how do we keep our young people from getting a first arrest? North Carolina is the age of 16, the youngest in the nation. At your 16th birthday, you're charged as an adult. No other state in the country is like that except New York, and they can send kids back to juvenile court. We are the most punitive state in the country, and once you get that first, even if it's a littering citation or a shoplifting or a disorderly conduct, you're 4 times more likely, oh well, I already have a record. So we've worked with the police, the prosecutor. Don't give them that first criminal arrest. We're going to hold them accountable, but the police aren't going to file it as long as these kids report to a court I run to teach them about the system, that they go do some community service, and once they comply, we rip up that arrest sheet or that citation, and they still have a clean record. So we're trying to be innovative and join along in the community to, address these issues.
I would like to say this for the correctional institution concerned. They do have internal structure for helping inmates. They have, but we have to keep in mind to staff the programs are not easy. They do have ESP, because kids have difficulty in learning, and they also have anger management courses. But that's why I said the family is so important, because that's not a mandate. These inmates had to request this type of service. If they don't want it, they don't have to get GED. They don't want to sit in their classroom. And they don't have to go to Alcohol Anonymous class. They don't have to do none of this stuff if they don't want to. And then when that happens, and that's when they become vulnerable to the needle. That's when the needle works, when the inmate doesn't work. And so it's a critical situation. I believe that the preventive method is the best. What we're going to do to keep them, like you said, out of this incarceration, because once they are incarcerated, there's a set of rules that must go by, and they don't have to go to church in the prison. They don't have to do nothing from a religious perspective. They don't have to take no classes. All they have to do, they can stay in their room, they can play their cards, and that type of thing. They don't have to, they can waste the hope. They can waste 10 years of their lives if they choose to. And there's nothing in the, I made a suggestion one time. It sounds pretty crazy to some people. I said, but if a child come into the prison system, he had a 6th or 7th grade education, it ought to be a mandate that he has to go to school. I know nobody don't want to do that. It ought to be a mandate, because he's not going to volunteer to go to school when everybody is playing their game, having fun. Did you know that some of the inmates have a ball in prison? The parents, I'm serious, the parents send them $15, $20 a week, and they eat and sleep and treat and gamble. They run an institution there. That's why the gang is so prevalent there. The different groups against different groups, and they got all kind of things that goes on in the prison. So if the inmates come in, quite obvious, if you're 18 years old, in the 6th grade, something went wrong in that person's life before he reached there. So you need some preventive measure, or continue their education after you get in from a mandatory perspective. You got to go to school now. You can't stop until you get a GED in here. But we don't have that.
Well, I pretty much have addressed the question, but I guess I would just say, if you can put a dozen people in a room and ask this question, and you're going to get 12, 24, 36, 48, many answers to the question, and they're all good answers. But to me, at least, like, the most important thing is not to make it just a theoretical question. Like, all of us need to do something, no matter if it's a very small thing.
Thank you. What we would like to do now is really open the floor to questions, and we're going to invite you, if you would, come forward to this microphone that is here on the floor, and our panelists will be happy to engage you in conversation.
Good evening, and thank you for the privilege of sitting and listening. I have some very strong feelings about the topic that you are addressing tonight. And if I might, if you would indulge me to digress briefly, I want to try to address the initial question that you posed, but I just feel so strongly the need to digress. And Professor Parton, this is my opinion. Reverend, I am so glad the inmates don't go to church. I am so disappointed with institutional religion, and particularly am I disappointed with black clergy. And I was married to one for 52 years. I just lost him. In terms of the intersection of violence in my life, within the circle of my immediate family, thank God we've never been exposed to it, but psychological, debilitating violence. All of the people in America who are descendants from the enslaved Africans do right now experience violence. And I think the attorney mentioned that. So, where I would have to start with the etiology of violence is to invoke the name of Dr. Amos N. Wilson, who wrote the book Black on Black Violence. So it would propel me to go back to Africa. There are two groups in this country who have unique existences. They are the natives, whose land was taken from them, and the descendants of African slaves who were taken from their land and culture. Do you have an extra glass of water? My mouth is dry. I guess it's my being so emotional. Now,
Adrian.
a very wise man whom we just lost made a very profound statement. Thank you. My late husband had a connection in his being liberated from Robben Island in South Africa. He said, and I quote, "When people are," and don't forgive me if it isn't his direct words, but it is definitely the sentiment of his thought. He said, "When people are suppressed, oppressed, and treated like they are not humans, they have an innate desire in their DNA to survive. So they will commit crime." Fortunately, my husband and I were able to meet our children's needs, and our children were able to meet their children's needs. And they all are very high achievers in spite of what we live with in this country. And you also referenced North Carolina. It is one of the states that is the most destructive when it comes to affirming, say, our citizenship, like voter suppression and other things. So, when I contemplate violence in this country, and you raise the question of why, I raise the question of why the crimes that are committed against people by society, particularly Africans and descendants from enslaved Africans, is not always also brought into this equation. You look at it from my perspective in a kind of a one-sided way. Either directly or by implication, you blame people of color and poor people. I have several books at home, and at 85, I can't always recall my thoughts. But one book that stands out for me right now is Without Sanctuary, where it's not only is it a pictorial record, but it's also written in script. And they show pictures of Africans hanging from trees. Some of them are men, some of them are women. So what I would like to know, two things. Have any of you read Dr. Wilson's book? Because he is acknowledged as an outstanding authority on this. Have you read his book? And what do you think the crimes are that society has perpetrated against people of color, and particularly the enslaved Africans and their descendants? If you could address that, I would appreciate it.
Thank you. Any of you? So my understanding of that question as the next question gets ready is sort of from a wider sociological perspective, societal. Is there a crime or crimes that society as a whole has committed against humanity in whatever form that is?
As far as what she was talking, if I get it, understand what she was saying, there are times where you can have a black person, a white person, the same job, but that white person is making more money. And you, in the areas where they live at, like their streets are well paved and well taken care of, where you can go in the black community, you got all these potholes and stuff like that. You might not have no stoplights, but like there was a couple bad accidents, people had gotten killed and had bad wrecks on the corner of Juniper and Miami. And they've been trying for years to get them to put a stoplight there, because when you come out, you basically have to pull out in the street to see around the corner. And a young white girl got killed, I think, got hit by a bicycle right here on 9th Street, and that's when they put that light up there and stuff. That's what I'm thinking. That's the only thing I can think of, how there is some people do feel like, hey, how many of us got to get killed for you to put a light in our area, And we got, had cars that ran into each other here and stuff, because at nighttime it is really bad. You have to basically pull out in the street, and the car come around the curve to go straight. They're going like around a tree. By the time they get out there, you're pulled out, and there go the wrecks. And they had several wrecks there, and they still haven't put a light there yet.
Ma'am, the thing you said that surprised me most was you said you were 85 years old? Is that? That's astounding. You look terrific. You asked a very huge question that is, as big as our society, and I don't have a good answer for it. But I would say that the model that I have seen of the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions in South Africa and other places seems to me to be a really wonderful model for promoting truth and healing. And I don't think it's too late to do something like that in this country. I think it'd be a wonderful thing to do.
And let me invite those of you that as you come forward for your comments and questions, to please be as succinct as possible in terms of time, so that we can allow and be hospitable to others that may have questions here tonight. Thank you. Go ahead.
My comment and my question. This is a list of psychologists and psychiatrists from an old telephone book, which we don't use anymore. But if we can't get these people to come together and admit what's going on in society, I don't see it ever being a solution for it. They know bad treatment, unequal treatment, and they know all of that and what the ramifications are down the line. Children are allowed, or they used to be allowed, to drop out of school at 16, and I'm not sure if that's still it. But why? Why nowadays? If it costs as much as someone said to house a prisoner, why not have that child in school? Young ladies can have babies at 16. Nobody bats an eye, because we have a few resources for you. but yet and still alcohol and tobacco, which doesn't necessarily screw up anybody's life. You can be, I think it's 18 to 21 before you can indulge. So why give a 16-year-old the choice of messing up his life, or at 16 to have a child, but you can't drink, you can't smoke a cigarette? Doesn't make any sense. My thing is, my African American community, and I look at this just from my community because I try to be involved in it, is a great, well above living wage employer. Not an employee, but an employer. The police, bail bondsmen, lawyers, judges, jailers, social services, and most nonprofits who give resources, but not the money that was stolen from our people 300 years ago. Everybody says, I live a life of privilege, and my thing is, what gives you that life of privilege? Is it because somebody gave you a voucher for your house? Or do you have money that's been passed down? Poverty is one of the worst things, and the way it's done in society, I call it legalized stealing. More can be done with a gold pen in an office somewhere to undermine someone who's going to need help later on. Life and society have committed brutal murders against Africans and people of African descent from 300 years back, but nobody talks about that. But if a 13-year-old hacks somebody to death, oh my God, what is wrong with him? Way back, guess what? Our people were beaten to death and left to survive or not survive. But nobody talks about that. And you were talking about cohabitating. When the slave masters were cohabitating with the female slaves, that was okay. But if a black woman cohabitates with someone she kind of likes, oh, sinful child, you're going straight to hell. It's always a different aspect when it comes to people of color. And I want to know, what is the psychological outcome of a people, and in particular, my African American community, who are faced every day with generational racism, legal financial thievery, being relegated to invisibility as a subhuman who society is taught to fear. You can't go over there because, he'll come after you. You better have your gun and stand your ground because he'll come after you. Those who begin at a young age to internalize self-hatred, they will, because somebody is supplying guns and drugs to an economically depressed community where jobs that used to be there, you could kind of make a living. You never got to the big money, but they're overseas. They know people have to eat. And it's like a joke when people go to social services to get food stamps or to get recertified and you're turned down. My thing is, they ought to hand you a plastic bag and a zip tie. As soon as you walk out there, you've got to eat if you don't do anything else. Give them a plastic bag, let them put it over their head, twist tie, and you just go ahead and die. Because what you're going to end up getting into is probably worse than just a quick death. Our children, a lot of times, are running the streets with no positive self-esteem because it's programmed into you from the get-go. Sometimes it's by parents, sometimes it's by grandparents, but most of the time it's society in general that you're not going, I might let you, and you will make it. And I'm going to make you look down on the ones that are coming behind you. And I don't want to be around, no, we don't go to those neighborhoods. Yeah, it's got to stop. The other one is these guns and drugs that are freely flowing into my community are not being brought in by the people in my community. The young people are just the ones foolish enough to have this pent-up hatred and think a gun makes you a man. And I always tell them, I don't fear you. I fear the gun. The gun is what will do the damage, not you. But you've got to learn that it's not the power in you. It's the power in that gun that somebody is supplying to you. And I just want to know where all of this, with the lack of economics, and I hear people say, well, go to school and get a college degree. I have friends right now that have been laid off that have college degrees. So if they're laid off, what's it for a child struggling from first and second grade to know by the time he gets to be 13, you're nothing. You're nothing. So that's why I want to know what all of these have to do with what children who turn to violence, and I can only talk about what I see in my community. How does the violence play out with these?
Thank you. Does anyone?
I understand everything you're saying, and the anger. And I look out at a courtroom, a criminal courtroom that is probably 95% African American. And yes, it hurts. And yes, I'm angry. And yes, I think there's generational and there is racism to this day on every street corner in every walk of our life. And we each look inside and say, how do we help? How do we care? How do I make that young boy or girl know that they are worthy? And we have to fight it. The poverty, the racism, we have to speak out, we have to understand it. It's forums like these. I hear everything you're saying, but I think we're trying to help and do it with caring and feeling. And the history, Arnold Dennis is back there, who has one of the best programs going, Rites of Passage. Young black kids, know your heritage. I mean, we need more of Arnold Dennis's and Rites of Passages. We need the community. We need the churches to help us.
We have time for one last question. Please come forward with your question, ma'am.
We talk about nonviolence, but it's the court system that have changed kids too. Because you go into the system and you try, and you have some judges, and you just had one, and I'm gonna call his name Hill, who literally act just like a pure fool in a domestic case. He belittled a woman that didn't make any sense. Just like I'm having a problem with the DA that just left out of here and the assistant DA. That's another thing that makes violence. You're talking about the kids. Your system is that you're talking about the teen program. There's a whole lot of kids that you talk about did not go through that teen program. They sent them through community service back in 1992. And be frank with you, you're talking about a 13-year-old. Joanne Little was the first one that was on the death row sentence in North Carolina as a black young girl. And it was Tom Lofton and them that helped Joanne Little. So as far as black people is concerned, we first got to get ourselves together. We can't look for no Anglo-Saxon, no Irish. We have to get together and stop the violence. And this cohabitation, I'm sorry, Minister, you're incorrect. A mother can have 4 different children by 4 different fathers, and for all those children can sit right there and graduate college and be anything that they want to be. That's one thing I hate when a minister judge, because you're sitting here, only one man can judge, and that's the man up there. You can't sit and judge a person about what they do. Because from my understanding, in 1976, 1978, and 1979, Polk Youth Center was set up this way. As black going into Polk Youth Center, you could not. You had to pull your time. But as a white young male, the first day you was eligible to walk in and walk out. And that came from Thomas Ringler, which was a lawyer. So I'm saying the system has always been set up for kids to end up being nonviolent. Violence is a thing that it got to stop, and we got to stop it. The police department is crooked, and be honest with you, the courthouse is crooked. Because just like Ms. Wilmer just said, we don't have no boats. Maxine Waters even spoke of it. We don't have the boats to bring it in. Nobody's not bringing in no pawn shots, stealing no guns. Just like Lopez, nobody's not saying anything about what Lopez's comment was made about his police officers didn't know that they didn't supposed to take guns home. Now, what law and what school did those police officers attend? But nobody's not complaining about what Lopez got on national television, media, and made that statement. Nobody's not saying a thing about that right there. Nobody's not pushing for Lopez to be taken out. Because you're not going to tell me that you don't know that when you confiscate a gun, what are you supposed to do with it? The police know they don't supposed to take it home. And my major was pre-law, and that was back in '76, and I know you know that also. But nobody's not even pushing, and this is why these kids are out here doing what they do. They get no respect. They stand on the corner. It could be 2 or 3 of them doing nothing. Police come up, harass them. They're getting tired of it. They're getting tired of being harassed, racial profile, everything. In it, just driving. Run your number, the cars, just stop you. Just on GP.
The only thing I'm going to respond, ma'am, be very careful when you generalize everything, that the courthouse is crooked.
It is.
I am not crooked.
No, I'm not. Well, excuse me for saying
But what
that
I'm
way.
saying is, fight the things you know that are wrong. But when we generalize, it's like generalizing that young 13-year-old, and that was my point. Don't generalize. There are some police, they should be off the force. There are some very good police. But I hear what you're saying. I understand your concerns, but I think it gets so dangerous for all of us when we say the police are crooked, the courthouse is fixed, you know.
Ma'am.
But we need to work on specifics.
Okay.
And you pointed out specifics, and those are issues
I can
that we
count-
need dialogue about.
Excuse me, Judge, I can give you a whole lot of police officers' names that are, and you have had some that have went to jail behind it and sure.
Absolutely. You're right.
And still, my question, you still can't answer the question. You say I generalize it, but I'm talking about Chief Lopez and the statement that he made. Nobody, even y'all judges, nobody in the court system has said anything about that statement that he have made.
Well, the courts, there are no charges against him, but you take it another issue, and we just haven't brought that topic up. But I understand your concern about it.
And thank you. Our time is gone.
Yes.
A short is the key.
My name is Eileen. I'm a public school teacher and a citizen of Durham, and I recently moved into the mixed income South Side neighborhood to build relationships between different people of different backgrounds and people of different income. And I think that's where hope can come, by building relationships. That's why I come to the coalition. That's why I support the coalition with my money and with my time and with my heart, because I think reconciliation starts with individuals, and it starts with trust. And when I interviewed for the job at Durham Public Schools, they asked me what I thought the most important thing in education is trust. Parents need to trust that we will do everything to teach their children. Some teachers do it, some teachers don't, just like with the police. But there is hope, and there are efforts in Durham to build community. That's why we're here tonight. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Let me say that the panelists will be around. You can still have conversation with them when we are officially done. but I wanted to let them have the last word. And I mean one sentence. Okay? And this is the question. This is the question. Where is the hope? Or what is the hope?
Honestly, I really don't know. I'm serious. I really don't know where the hope is.
Okay.
I think the hope is loving and caring about each other.
I believe hope is not making the past pay for the future.
I'd say just as there is violence in every human heart, there is also peace and forgiveness and reconciliation, and that's what I hope for.
So panelists, audience, and all of you, thank all of you for participating in tonight's bridge panel on this important topic and for helping Duke Chapel, helping us connect people from various walks of life on this important topic of responding to violence with justice and mercy. I wish you all a wonderful evening and God's richest blessings. And as you go, feel free to take in the Breaking Out exhibit. Thank you all.